Hello everyone and welcome to a new lesson with Miss Rafa. Today we're going to start with Unit 3, Poetry. Let's focus on the reading skill. Let's start. Unit 3, Poetry. Module 2, Genres of Literature 1. Let's start with a preview. What is the relationship between literature and culture? Give some examples of literature. Have you ever read a poem in English? What difficulties did you face? Why do you think people write poetry? Who's your favorite poet? Now let's start with the reading. Let's see some vocabulary first. Imaginative, imaginative, imaginative. Awareness, awareness, awareness. Rhyme, rhyme, rhyme. Rhythmic, rhythmic, rhythmic. Epic poem, epic poem, epic poem. Evoke, evoke, evoke. Meter, meter, meter. Satire, satire, satire. Mock heroic, mock heroic, mock heroic. Sonnet, sonnet, sonnet. Criticism, criticism, criticism. Greek mythology, Greek mythology, Greek mythology. Archaeological, excavation, archaeological excavations, archaeological excavations, archaeological excavations. Cited, cited, cited. Sumerian, Sumerian, Sumerian. Babylonian, Babylonian, Babylonian. Iliad, Iliad, Iliad. Odyssey, Odyssey, Odyssey. Rain, rain, rain. Gilgamesh, Gilgamesh, Gilgamesh. Mastery, 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 tension, 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 comedic, 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 centrality, 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 mainstream art, mainstream art, mainstream art, consciousness, 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 crucial, 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 selfhood, 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 model, 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 global circulation, global circulation, global circulation, precious, legacy, precious legacy, precious legacy, vital, challenging, vital and challenging, vital and challenging, vital and challenging, Renaissance, 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 Elizabethan, 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 restoration, 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 romantic, 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 Victorian, 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 modernism, modernism, modernism. Now let's start with the reading. History of poetry. Poetry is an imaginative awareness of experience expressed through meaning, sound, and rhythmic language choices, so as to evoke an emotional response. It has been known as music of ideas and employs meter and rhyme, but this is by no means necessary. In fact, poetry has been around for thousands of years. However, we might think of the Eback poem as the first instance of poetry, appearing as early as the 20th century BC. The Eback of Gilgamesh is often cited as one of the earliest works of Epic poetry, dating back to the 18th century BC, consisting of Sumerian poems. It's a text that was discovered through many different Babylonian tablet versions during archaeological excavations. A list of the most notable works of epic poetry, at least in the Western world, would have to include the Iliad and the Odyssey, both works of Greek mythology that have been attributed to the poet Homer. Throughout history, poetry has appeared in different forms. The sonnet form became best known as an English poetic form through the work of William Shakespeare in the 16th century. Where did the poetic form lead after the sonnet? Elizabethan poetry of the 1500s soon shifted into Restoration poetry and a marked turn away from the sonnet. Following the reign of Queen Elizabeth I, the English Restoration period from 1660 to 1689 saw the rise of literary elites, such as John Dryden, perhaps one of the best-known names of English literary criticism, translation, drama, and poetry. The form of the mock heroic and the use of poetic form for satire didn't end with Dryden. Alexander Pope, most famous for his work, The Rape of the Lock, 1712, carried on Dryden's tradition of using poetry for comedic ends. Poetry was for centuries a mainstream art, and writers such as Spenser, Milton, Donne, Blake, Wordsworth, Tennyson, and Browning created a world of beauty, of image and forms, as enduring as the painting of the Renaissance or the music of the classical age. Their work became part of the English consciousness. The story of English poetry could be seen in terms of a tension between formal mastery and individual expression, a tension in which the Romantic movement was crucial in focusing attention on the personal vision of the poet. Blake, Wordsworth, Shelley, Keats, Tennyson, and Whitman were exploring their own selfhood and their responses to the world. They were no longer interested in perfecting existing models or in being part of any school. Yet by the 20th and 21st centuries, modernism and the waves of change brought about by World War also influenced poetry, resulting in works by poets with distinct voices who came to enjoy global circulation. poetry may no longer enjoy this position of centrality in our culture, but the music of ideas that these poets developed is still among the most precious legacies that we have received from the past. This history explores that legacy and shows how vital and challenging modern poetry can still be. Adapted from A Brief History of Poetry. Now let's answer some questions. Read the text, then match the highlighted words with their meanings. Meter, rhyme, excavations, sonnet, elites, mock, satire, Renaissance, legacies. A group of people who have a lot of power and influence because they have money, knowledge, or special skills. Elites. A poem with 14 lines which rhyme with each other in a fixed pattern. Sonnet. Making fun of people. Mock. Things inherited from a predecessor or the past. Legacies. The activities of digging in the ground to look for old buildings or objects that have been buried for a long time. Excavations. The arrangement of sounds in poetry into patterns of strong and weak beats. Meter. The lines end with words that have very similar sounds. Rhyme. The period in Europe, especially Italy in the 14th, 15th, and 16th centuries, when there was a new interest in art, literature, science, and learning. Renaissance. The use of humor or exaggeration in order to show how foolish or wicked some people's behavior or ideas are. Satire. Now B. Read the text again and decide whether these statements are true or false. Correct the false ones. Epics are the recent form of poetry. False. They are the earliest form of poetry. The Iliad and the Odyssey are related to Latin mythology. False. They are Greek. Shakespeare is credited with the appearance of the sonnet form in English poetry. True. After John Dryden, satire was rarely used in poetry. False. The use of poetic form for satire didn't end with Dryden. The Rape of the Lock by Alexander Pope ends with a tragedy. False. It ends with a comedy. Romantic poets wrote poems in a traditional style. False. They were no longer interested in perfecting existing models or in being part of any school. Nowadays, a lot of poets inherited their ideas from old poetry. True. Now see. Arrange the poets according to their chronological appearance. Homer, William Shakespeare, John Dryden, Alexander Pope, Keats. That's everything for today. Thank you very much. See you next lesson.